What's up, amigos? So I recently made a post on Twitter, YouTube, and my Discord server on basically what's the main reason that you or your friends are not playing the premium format. And the reason this is relevant is because for years, a lot of people have been playing V premium or standard and yet don't want to touch premium with a 10-fold pole. So in this video, I really want to encompass everything in a general format, because I did notice 3 general themes that really were the answers of these players themselves. And as I go over the themes, essentially I will cover where people are coming from and understand why people don't jump into the premium format and want to stay in a format like standard, for example. And then after that, I'll give some tips and solutions for those people that are really have the desire to actually try out premium, but there might be 1 or 2 things that may be holding them back too as well. I will also provide resources in the description too, 2 links that are going to be helpful for anybody that wants to dive into the premium format. So the first big general theme that I saw is that players were saying that the card pool is huge. And we're talking about 10 plus years of Cardfight Vanguard that a lot of the new players have not touched. We're also seeing reasons that people just don't know where to start as well. And further, to add to that, that they feel there's some complexity or even it's just a lot more dynamic than the play that people are used to in standard. And again, that's all fine as well, because, you know, as new players, you're really diving into Vanguard in a great time for the standard format, with Bushiroad doing a great job on rebooting the series and have been doing really well in my eyes, because I've been around for a long time, for almost 10 years now. And some of the reasons that I've heard from it is that it's because it takes less effort to play standard. And that's a valid reason too, because some people just want to play casually, and also they have very busy lives too. So if they can spend as little time as really learning the deck, or maybe like actually learn how to play the meta game or something like that, and really just more time on enjoying the gameplay itself, which is totally valid, and I understand from that. You know, people that come to mind that are very busy, or people that, you know, are in school still, maybe going to work in their full-time career. They also have a family or maybe a business that they're running to. So a lot of factors can be taking their time, essentially. And so their hobby is really Cardfight Vanguard. And if they want to spend more time actually just playing the game itself, that's totally valid. And that's it's a stress relief at that point too, right? So that way you can still do the things that are important in your life and use Cardfight Vanguard as an avenue to just enjoy the format. Now, for those that have seen these reasons, or maybe you're just like maybe 1 or 2 reasons stuck behind this, just some tips and solutions. And again, this is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, so use your brain to whatever applies for you. But if you're going to dive into this massive card pool and don't necessarily know where to start, I would just suggest searching for content. You know, there's amazing videos, there's blogs on YouTube, and also you can Google it. And I mean specifically like deck profiles, overviews, card reviews, even gameplay matches that you feel like you just want to see the deck in action, because sometimes you see a list and it's not the full picture. So then the following question is like, okay, what kind of creators do I look for? And William from Twitter had made a spreadsheet almost a year ago now of all the content creators that really put their names out there to be on a spreadsheet where it showed the type of content they made, but also the format that they cover as well. So you can go into the spreadsheet, I'll link it in the description too, and find all the premium content creators, and you can search what premium content they do provide. Another great avenue to get your feet wet is using Fuzzy Paradox's website, vgparadox.com. And so this is a great website of the topping deck list in the metagame too. So even though you're not maybe super competitive, but you want to like really know like what's being actually played, that's a good place to like start. And again, it's just lists, so you won't necessarily see the big picture, and that's where you kind of put 2 and 2 together. And you may look for the content itself, but my other advice too with that is really just asking a friend, or even in a Discord server, to people that actually play the format too. So you'll be surprised that there are a lot of people that would like to help out people in that format too, and also teach people as well. And I think the best way for premium is somebody that is actually willing to hop on Discord or Zoom and actually play with you on CFA or remote fight with the cards that you have, and really start fresh. And there's also the personality types that really just want to do the research first before they start like actually playing the cards, and that's fine too. Whatever suits you the best. Also, with my recommendation on this, I would recommend just starting with more casual based decks. Don't feel like you have to get like the top decks of the metagame too, especially with History Collection coming around this corner too. The metagame will change. Just start something with simpler that is catered to your taste, maybe the aesthetics, or something that is already similar to what you're already playing in standard, for example. Sometimes with the meta decks, like there's some interactions that you may not be used to, such as like with this previous format, there's a lot of write downs, soul blasting certain grade 3. So that way by the comprehensive rules, you write whatever's in your soul, like things like that. You can kind of build up to that later and just have more of the premium aspect of striding, G guarding, and then also like just using older cards that are you're not used to as well. And just to wrap this general theme up is, it's okay if you feel like you're learning pretty slowly in this format too. There is a bit of a learning curve that you have to get through, and it's okay. But once you're past the learning curve, you start making those clicks in your head, and you start the deck building process of your skill set of improving as well. So that way you have a more flow and a more enjoyment of actually playing the game as well in this format. Number 2, I saw reasons that essentially pointed out to having no locals, card accessibility, the pricing of certain cards, and also because you play more cards because of a G zone, it should cost more, right? So as a player, I understand those may be the reasons that are holding you back, because what's the point if you don't have a locals, or maybe the cards you're trying to get are so hard to get that it's not even worth it at that point too. So you just feel like, what's the point kind of feeling. Or even it's a financial barrier too. You may be going through school right now and don't have a full-time job that's actually able to supply enough income to actually step into this format. I understand you're already in the standard format, and if you're trying to include another deck for a different format, and you also are starting to think that I should keep it up to date as new support comes out, it can be overwhelming too as well. I do have some cool tips on that too, so that way it's essentially free or even like very low cost that you can still play in the premium format. And so the first thing that is obviously free is CFA. You can play with the online version of the cards, and then you can actually just play premium right off the gate. And you can also have the ability to play with people around the world because it's online. You're not limited to locals, which is in person. And I want to take a quick second to, like, if you do have a locals, just be a little bit appreciative of what you have too, because not everybody has access to that too. So they may have to fall back to this option as their first go-to. What's really cool too, that there are virtual events too and Discord servers that promote premium format as well. And even Bushiroad does the virtual events as well with BRO. So that's always something cool. And later this year in November, the premium format will be in Bro coming soon. Now, if you're the type of player that would appreciate more of the physical aspect of the game, don't like to click on the computer all the time, the other alternative is actually using proxies. Obviously, these are more applicable to actual more casual play or even locals or events that allow proxies to be, but more than likely, it's just going to be casual play with your friends that are in person or at a locals as well. And with proxies, you can print them out very cheaply at a library or a Office Depot or what kind of store that actually provides printing services. But you could also print them at home if you have your own printer as well. And you have a lot of options too. And you can really be cheap. And I'm talking about like a few dollars to make an entire deck. That's 50 cards in the main deck. That's 16 cards in the G zone. And then maybe some markers on the ticket shield. And you're good to go, probably for less than $10. Now, it may not be the best looking proxies because they may be black and white, but you can spend a little bit just to get color if you want to. And that's generally good enough for me as well. I know some people have gone also with fancier paper that's like more glossy look too, just to kind of give that glossy lookness too. Even though it's a proxy, so you can get as creative and as free as you want to be with this route. And this is often used with like top deck heroes with proxy play as well. And so I actually have a video on how to proxy, so that way you can learn how to make your own proxies, because that would be the next question. It's like, okay, proxy sounds great, but how do I make them? Because if I'm dependent on somebody making the proxies, then I'm kind of out of luck, which I totally get. You could also do a hybrid of proxies and your real cards. And this could be like really hard to get cards such as like Royal Paladin with Crystal Luster, for example. This card is pretty expensive, and I understand why it may be a little bit pricey, but at the same time, if you already have a Royal Paladin deck that's made pretty cheap, you just can proxy the expensive cards if you want to save some money. And at that point, you have a physical deck that you can actually play with your friends and maybe at an event if they allow proxies as well. Now, the next stage is that you do want to invest into real cards, and it's like you don't want to spend all of the money on the cards that you may end up using, and then you find out later that you don't use the cards that you actually purchase, which seems like a waste of money. What I would recommend is playtesting your deck on CFA first and see what the deck build is going to look like. And once you're ready to purchase, at that point, you can purchase with confidence on the cards that you're actually going to use too, especially if you're going through vendor websites or maybe through like Facebook Marketplace with other players from the community as well. At least you know what you're looking for and what you actually use for sure. There's also a stigma that, like I said, that just because you have more cards in this format, it costs more than what it would cost in standard, and that's not true. There's actually standard decks that cost way more than a lot of the premium decks that you can make for fun. And I say that with fun because they're the top meta decks, but honestly, it's only a few meta decks compared to the creative decks that you can make. And you got to realize there's 24 plus clans, and I think most people are geared to standard where you see 6 nations. Now you have 24 clans and within those clans, there's years and years of actually support, and you can get really creative on maybe like an aesthetic or a winning image that you really want to enjoy and play with your friends too as well. Some quick examples are like maybe you take your Flagberg deck and then just slap an Aqua Force G Zone and maybe use the stride like Ferragus to generate Excel circles, and it has a very similar pattern of attacks that Flagberg already does. So Ferragus really works with that as well. Again, it's more of a fun deck. It's not like super competitive. Another deck idea is that I did Zorga Colony with a collab with Duke Cardfight before too, where really we took the power of Mega Colony's G-Zone and then put Zorga as with Alchemy Magic, because you don't necessarily have to stride. You can Persona right, you can do Alchemy Magic and power up your columns that way. And then you have access to cards in the G-Zone that can reduce your opponent's Vanguard by 10k as well. So like you can get really creative and have these niche like types of decks as well for pretty cheap, to be honest. The third and last big general theme that I got from the posts and the comments is that the format is too competitive, so it's not fun when you're getting destroyed. Or the format is stale after 6 months plus and doesn't really change to maybe a year's time, or whenever a dedicated premium collection type of set is released. And then also OTs, you know, OTs can ruin your turns, all this hard work that you're putting into, and all of a sudden the skill is just like thrown out the window when the OT is in the picture. And as a player, I understand where you're coming from, because if you're around players that are a little, I guess, too serious in a way that's stressful, and that could come from maybe being like too cocky or elitist, or maybe not as inviting or not as welcoming, because like, oh, if you're gonna play premium, are you actually, you know, I try hard, or are you going to be competitive? Like there's that stigma that I've seen players kind of deal with, and it can be frustrating for real. It's just a hobby. It's just a game. Like you can be serious, but you can be also like good sportsmanship and welcome players like, hey, let me show you the path to competitive way, but in a positive light, versus like some like intense crazy thing, right? And then also the feeling of like it's not as exciting when the format doesn't change for 6+ months, and I get that it can get very boring. So what's the point, especially if there's no new sets coming out every single month or every couple of months too, so you have to wait basically a year for actual dedicated support at this point too. And then lastly, of course, the OT, like when it happens, it's like let's say you're playing Spike Brothers or Aqua Force or some kind of like multi-attack deck, and you're really outplaying your opponent and you're doing your big combo, and then of course they check defensively in OT, and now your turn ends. It just feels bad, and I understand that, but it doesn't happen all the time. But when it does happen, you do feel bad. So I get that. You feel like that salt in your mouth, right? And you can like physically feel it at that point, but totally get you. But again, I do have some tips that can help with that as well. What I would recommend, because of the format that you feel may be too competitive, you don't have to play competitive to begin with. You can play more casual. And what I would recommend is that whenever you have a playtesting partner, is setting the right expectation too, because you can have similar level decks and you can have like the most fun experience when playing that format. Nobody wants to play a Gear Chronicle deck that's meta against a deck that's just like in the quotes of jank, right? Or a more casual deck. The Gear Chronicle player is going to stomp the other deck, right? And I understand that. So that's why if you set the right expectation where like, if you're going to play meta, then you both play meta. If you're going to play more casual, then you both play more casual decks that are very similar power levels. So that way it's a back and forth. You actually enjoy some plays and you're not just like destroyed at that point, which ruins the fun. Trust me. Nobody wakes up or dreams of like playing in Vanguard and they like, oh, I like this game so much and I can envision myself with my winning image losing. Like nobody does that, right? You see yourself winning, and I get that competitive spirit from people as well. But at the same time, you want to have a blast when playing too. To give a real life example, I know Duke Cardfight and I, he's one of my testing playing partners. We're very intentional with the days that we actually hang out physically or even on CFA. It's like, hey, today I just want to play jank for real. Like this is some deck that I was messing with in premium. Can you help me out and just play test? And sure, let's do it. And then there's like the times where a tournament is coming up and then, hey, I need to prep for this event. Let's step it up a notch. Let's play these decks and actually get some good practice in. And we'll feel more confident going into a tournament. And we've been doing that for years too. So I think setting the right expectation goes so far in your enjoyment in the game. Not only just fun for playing, but also even prepping for competitive if you decide to go into like the BCS route. Also, if you feel like the format hasn't changed for a while, do explore other decks. I mean, again, 24 plus clans. I'm sure you could figure out some interesting combinations. And I just gave a few with like Flagberg and Zorga. You don't have to use cards from overdress. You can look back in history and really like, hey, can I build like an old school deck? I know some players have even done G format too. So it's sort of premium, but it's really G at that point, up to that point. But you can really find a lot of good cards that you can still have fun, assuming that you're playing at the same power level too. So get creative. And the last thing, like I mentioned, is like the OT is a thing also in premium, right? So with that being said, you could just not play the OT. And some of you are like, wait, what? Like it's legal, it's not hit on the ban list, you have to play it. And it's not necessarily true, because if you look at the comprehensive rules, yes, it does require 50 cards in the main deck. Yes, it requires 16 triggers in the deck, but nothing says that you have to play one OT in your deck. And that's actually completely viable, because there's a restriction with Ultima with any OT. So if you decide that a Cater United Sectionary deck is more catered to an Ultima, you can eliminate the OT yourself and not use it. But then you may be asking like, what about my opponents? Everyone's going to use it. And that's where you can just play casually and just agree to it. Like, hey, we both don't like the OT. Let's just take it out. Let's just play without it. And this is a very good example. And one of the more solution-minded comments that I got in my post is from Kingslayer Cards. Thank you, Richard Garcia, for even saying this, but they host a no OT premium tournament. They literally play premium without OTs. And so they have pricing to my knowledge and everything like that. So it's excited, and they have a good turnouts. I think like they had like 30 to 50 people last time that they had their event too, and it was just very positive feedback too. It's just something different, right? You could always go to the regionals like BCS and stuff and play normally. Of course, you'll see over triggers in the mix there, but there are some options there. That there's some virtual events too, but also like the events that Kingslayer Cards are doing, and you can do that at home with your friends or at your locals too. So just like ask around. Honestly, that could be the one thing that's holding your community as a whole from playing premium, because of the OT, which I understand. There's plenty of videos and content creators and people complaining on Twitter. And it's just like, just don't play it. Like play premium without it. And if everyone's in agreement, I think you're going to have a good time. And again, thanks to Richard Garcia. I have no affiliation to Kingslayer Cards as well, so I appreciate for your efforts on like putting the solution-minded aspect behind it and doing something about it. So kudos to you guys. And I just want to wrap up this last point too, is that like if you're going competitive and you're planning to participate in BCS, you do have to prepare for the OT. It's a thing. You're going to have to learn how to deal with it, but it's not the end of the world. There are certain decks that can get around it. Not many decks can do it, but there are certain decks, like for example, Aqua Force has Valeos, Nubotama has a card like Ungai, and there's probably other options or things that you can get it around as well. And furthermore, there's other decks that can stack the overtrigger a little bit better, or even like decked in enough to see it more often. So you're just going to have to learn how to use it and deal with it at that point too, if you're wanting to top at a big event for Bushiroad that's hosting. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of players that have been consistently topping over the years too, with this OT being in existence as well. So you can do it too as well. And again, those are the three overarching general themes that I got from these posts, these answers. And I hope this video helped a little bit just to understand where players are coming from, but also like some tips and suggestions that you can use to like jump into premium format as well. Like I said, there's resources in the description. Feel free to share the video with somebody that would even like to see this type of content. Like, okay, like, you know, maybe you do want to play premium. This might be the one thing that's holding you back. Let's make it fun, right? At that point too. And I think you guys can work that out to the best of your situation as well. If you want to support the channel, use the affiliated links with 50 Card Shop, Trading Card Min, TCG Player, and Card Trader Zero. And also feel free to book a Metafy session if you want more one-on-one coaching or somebody just to help you there as well, transition into the premium format. And also I can help ramp you up for an event too, if that's your goal too as well. Just happy to help out to the community wherever I can. On to the next one, amigos. Bye!